Anthony Albanese has become the face of every broken promise you've ever heard from a politician. The bloke doesn't lead, he lingers. While Australia drowns in a swamp of rising costs, economic mismanagement, and global irrelevance, Anthony Albanese is busy sipping wine at summits where he's not even invited to sit at the adult table. What we've got isn't leadership, it's damage control wrapped in talking points and polished PR spin. And Aussies are sick to death of it. You remember that G7 summit? Albanese walks in, puffed up like a show pony, all prepped to meet Donald Trump, only to find out via bloody Twitter that Trump bailed before dinner. You reckon that's just bad luck? Or does it scream something louder? That Anthony Albanese isn't taken seriously, not by world leaders, not even by his own voters anymore. Trump calls up Modi, rings Mexico, gets chummy with half the planet. But our PM? Ghosted. No invite. No meeting. Not even a handshake in the hallway. And when he's asked about it, Anthony Albanese acts like it's no big deal. Says we've had constructive discussions. Mate, getting stood up is not a constructive discussion. That's being mugged of your dignity on the world stage. And we all saw it. Albanese keeps saying we shouldn't talk down Australia. But that's rich coming from the bloke who's turned this country into a diplomatic ghost town. Because let's be honest, when you can't even lock in a phone call with the most powerful bloke on the planet, you're not leading a country. You're babysitting it. Before we unpack this Albanese disaster, where Albo gets ghosted by Trump, let's Kevin Rudd call the shots, and think censorship is leadership, slap that like button like you're rejecting every broken promise this government ever made. Subscribe if you're done being lied to with a smile. And grab the Make Politics Honest Again shirt. Wear it to your next rent inspection, protest, or just while yelling at the telly. Links in the description. Now let's talk about Kevin Rudd, the man who called Trump a village idiot, a traitor to the West, and the most destructive president in history. That Kevin Rudd is now our ambassador to the US. And guess who backed that appointment? That's right, Anthony Albanese. So now, our top diplomat is a bloke who publicly bagged the very administration we're trying to negotiate billion-dollar defense deals with. Genius, right? And Albo just shrugs it off like it's no big deal. Says he's proud of Kevin's hard work. Mate, hard work doesn't mean much if your presence in Washington makes every handshake feel like a middle finger. Let's not forget Julie Inman Grant, the so-called SFT commissioner backed by Albanese, who thinks memes are dangerous. But letting big tech partner with the government to silence dissent is just fine. Welcome to Anthony Albanese's Australia, where free speech is on life support, satire is a crime, and censorship wears a smiley bureaucratic badge. Don't like government policy? Better watch what you post, mate, because Julie and Albo are watching. And they've got your IP address. And while the government's busy gagging memes, what's happening to the average Aussie? Rents through the roof. Interest rates are squeezing families like a bloody vice. And wages? Still crawling behind the cost of living like a wombat with a limp. Albanese stands at the podium telling us we're doing better. Better for who, Albo? The property developers? The corporates getting handouts while regular Aussies cut back on meat and skip meals just to cover the power bill. Now he's pushing this big productivity roundtable like it's some messianic answer to all our problems. But let's get real. No one at the pub is talking about productivity strategy. They're talking about how to survive the week. Albanese says he wants to bring people together from civil society and business. You know what that means? Suits, think tanks, and a bunch of career politicians swapping buzzwords over catered lunches. No one from Logan or Dubbo or Bankstown, just policy wonks pretending they've lived through the struggle. And what's Albo's biggest pitch to help? He wants to raise the GST, a tax that hits battlers the hardest, while pretending it's part of a mature conversation. What a joke. Albanese says he wants fairness, but every policy out of his office seems to hit the same people: renters, workers, young families. He talks like a champion of the people while picking their pockets clean. It's not reform, it's redistribution dressed in progressive lipstick. And don't forget the super tax changes. Under Albanese, even your retirement isn't safe. Saved too well? Stashed away a bit of security for your future? Sorry, mate, Albo wants a slice. Because apparently, doing the right thing and planning ahead makes you the enemy now. That's the world Anthony Albanese is building, where discipline and effort are punished, while mismanagement is sold as compassion. Let's talk NDIS, an idea that started strong and ended up as another bloated monster. Albanese boasts about fixing it, but the truth is, the system's riddled with rorts and sinking fast. We've got 11% of 6-year-olds on the NDIS. Let that sink in. Is that compassion or cooked stats to make Labour look like heroes? Because if you ask around, plenty of people who genuinely need help are being thrown on endless waitlists while kids with mild symptoms slide in because it looks good on paper. Albanese isn't protecting the vulnerable. He's protecting the numbers. And while Aussies try to figure out how to keep the lights on, Albo's throwing billions at the AUKUS deal. That's right, a defense contract so expensive it makes your mortgage look like a phone bill. Albanese brags about it like it's a badge of honor, even as we outsource everything to the Yanks. Our shipyards rot, our engineers look overseas, and the PM wants a pat on the back for turning Australia into a subcontractor for American warfare. We're not allies, we're interns. Penny Wong manages a 10-minute convo with Marco Rubio, and the Labour Party acts like they've brokered world peace. It's desperation disguised as diplomacy. Anthony Albanese has turned Australia into a side character in our own foreign policy, always waiting, always reactive, always getting the leftovers. And somehow, the media still claps. The bar is on the floor, and Albo's still tripping over it. Meanwhile, domestic jobs are drying up in the private sector. Sure, the government loves to boast about job creation, but take a closer look. Most of them are public sector gigs, funded by you, me, and every other taxpayer already stretched to the brink. Albanese talks about skills and training like he's building a new generation of tradies. But if you ask anyone actually on the tools, they'll tell you red tape's thicker, apprenticeships are fewer, and there's more talk than actual building. And Albanese has the audacity to spin it all as a win. Says we should be proud of having a nurse in every aged care home. Sure, that's a step, but it's also a band-aid on a broken femur. Our aged care sector is still understaffed, underpaid, and treated like an afterthought. One nurse doesn't fix a system on the brink. It's window dressing, and Albanese knows it. But hey, it makes a good headline, and that's all that matters now. Let's not skip over the green agenda either. Renewable targets keep getting pumped out like press releases, but where's the power coming from when the sun don't shine and the wind don't blow? Albanese shuts down coal, blocks nuclear, and somehow thinks batteries alone will keep the country ticking. It's ideology over reality, and Aussies are paying for it every single time the power bill comes in hot and heavy. And as the economy teeters, Albanese doubles down on union power. He's cozied up to the CFMEU like it's a charity group, when everyone knows it's the most militant pack of bullies in the game. Under the former government, they were under the pump. Under Albo, they're back, unchecked and untouchable. You think that's a coincidence? Or is it just another deal scratched on the back of a napkin at a fundraiser while the rest of us choke on red tape and sky-high costs? But here's the worst part. Anthony Albanese genuinely thinks he's doing a good job. He parades around interviews talking about laser-like focus and mature conversations while the rest of the country stares blankly at petrol prices and rental listings like they're horror movie scripts. This disconnect is staggering. It's not just bad policy, it's delusion on full display. Albanese lives in a Canberra bubble where every problem can be talked away and every failure gets rebranded as a transition. And when he's finally challenged, on tax, spending, immigration, you name it, he dances around the questions like a career bureaucrat. Won't rule anything in, won't rule anything out. Always looking at the numbers, always consulting stakeholders. Never delivering. It's a masterclass in saying nothing with lots of words. And the media? They lap it up like it's gospel. But the people watching from their kitchens, checking their shrinking bank accounts, they're seeing through the fog. You want to know why Anthony Albanese is so comfortable dodging real questions? Because he's never had to answer for real failure. He rose through the ranks of the Labour machine by playing the long game, not leading. He's a survivor, not a visionary. And now that he's got the top job, he doesn't know what to do with it except blame the last government and read speeches off teleprompters. That's not a prime minister. That's a placeholder. And it doesn't stop at economics or diplomacy. Look at the state of law and order. Crime's on the rise. Youth violence is exploding. And what does Albanese say? That we need more community programs and inclusive dialogue. Mate, dialogue doesn't stop a gang from bashing a pensioner at the train station. What we need is spine, not spin. What we need is action, not advisory boards and feel-good presses. And if you think this is harsh, just ask yourself, is your life better since Anthony Albanese took office? Are your bills lower? Your rent fairer? Your freedoms more protected? Or are you just more tired, more broke, and more fed up than you've ever been before? Because that's the real story. Behind the photo ops, the staged interviews, the think tanks, the hashtags, Anthony Albanese has led this country into a quiet crisis. A slow decay masked by nice words and recycled slogans. And unless we call it out now, loud, direct, and unapologetically, we'll wake up in 5 years wondering how the hell we lost the Australia we knew. And here's the ugly truth they'll never put on a press release. Anthony Albanese hasn't just mismanaged the present, he's sabotaging the future. Young Aussies who used to dream of home ownership now scroll real estate listings like it's a comedy show. 2-bedroom dumps going for $1 million, and Albanese's grand solution? A shared equity scheme that gives the government part ownership of your home forever. Imagine working your guts out, paying a mortgage for 30 years, only to still be in debt to Canberra. That's not a solution, it's a trap disguised as a helping hand. And while everyday people are busting a gut just to survive, Albanese's crew are quietly inflating the public service like it's a jobs fair for their mates. New roles, new departments, more bureaucracy, all while the private sector gasps for air. You look at the numbers and it's obvious. Under Albanese, nearly 2/3 of new jobs created are either government-funded or linked to it. That's not growth, it's artificial employment, propped up by your taxes and dressed up like economic progress. Even worse, Albo pretends like this is all part of some grand vision. But when he's asked to explain how all these programs, summits, roundtables, and schemes actually fix anything, he starts circling the drain of vague talking points. Productivity, sustainability, dialogue, community. It's all the same stale soup, reheated and served with a grin. But what's it actually done for the single mum working 3 shifts? For the small business owner buried in regulation? For the young bloke who's got the skills but not the license because the damn system's clogged? And while we're at it, how about we shine a light on education? Albanese talks about investing in the future, but the schools are falling apart, teachers are burnt out, and the curriculum reads like it was written by a committee of activists and consultants instead of educators. We've got kids leaving high school without basic literacy, but Albo wants to add more units on climate grief and identity theory. Great, because when the economy's on fire, what we really need are more confused teenagers with a TikTok degree in victimhood. Universities? Don't get me started. Albanese has basically handed them over to ideologues with tenure. Dissenting views? Silenced. Open debate? Gone. Academic rigor? Optional. But you'd better pay your HECS, even if your arts degree won't land you a job at Macca's. And guess who gets lumped with the debt while Albanese pats himself on the back for higher education access? Yep, you. Now let's talk immigration. Albanese keeps saying we need more skilled migrants. But what we're actually getting is overcrowded cities, crushed infrastructure, and even more pressure on housing. Suburbs are bursting, rents are spiking, and every other call to 000 takes 20 minutes. You try getting a GP appointment in Sydney without waiting 2 weeks, good luck. But sure, let's keep the borders wide open and call it inclusive growth. Meanwhile, Australians born and raised here are being shoved further to the margins. And don't forget the skyrocketing crime. Albanese won't talk about it unless it's to blame state premiers or broader socioeconomic conditions. Translation? It's never his fault. Even when young gangs terrorize suburbs, when small businesses get robbed blind, and when women are scared to walk alone at night, Albanese hides behind reports and roundtables. Because facing real consequences means owning real decisions. And Albanese is allergic to accountability. But it's not just what he says, it's what he ignores. Farmers are screaming about red tape and land grabs, but Albanese is too busy playing climate messiah to care. Energy policies that kill diesel and coal without proper alternatives aren't green, they're suicidal. You can't power a farm with fairy dust, But try telling that to Anthony Albanese, who's never driven a harvester in his life, but still thinks he knows how regional Australia should function. And while Albo lectures the bush about emissions, he hops on private jets to climate summits and flashes his smile like a bloke who's never missed a meal. We're told to tighten our belts, but Albanese flies first class and eats better in one day than some pensioners do in a fortnight. If there was ever a clearer image of elite hypocrisy, it's this bloke in a suit talking sacrifice while sipping imported Shiraz in Geneva. Meanwhile, the Indigenous voice to Parliament, remember that? Albanese staked his political legacy on it, threw millions into the campaign, bullied media outlets into blind support, and when Aussie said no, he acted shocked. No reflection, no humility, just more gaslighting. Maybe, just maybe, Australians didn't reject the idea of reconciliation. Maybe they rejected being told they were racist if they asked a single question. But that nuance doesn't fit Albanese's script, so he just labels the country divided and moves on. He thought it would be his legacy. But like most things he touches, it turned into a political disaster. And instead of listening, he doubled down. Said Australians didn't understand the referendum. Said they were misled. You hear that? When the country says no, Anthony Albanese doesn't blame himself, he blames the voters. That's not democracy. That's condescension with a smug accent. And what about the military? Albanese talks about national security, but our defense forces are running on the smell of an oily rag. Recruitment is down, equipment's outdated, morale's in the bin. But Albanese still has time for glossy presses where he stands beside generals and says all the right words. It's all optics. He's the selfie PM, more interested in capturing the moment than building anything lasting. The truth is, and it's a hard one, Anthony Albanese governs like a man who wants to be liked more than respected. That's why every policy is dipped in buzzwords. That's why he flips on taxes, avoids confrontation, and blames changing circumstances every time he breaks a promise. He's terrified of being unpopular, and that fear has paralyzed him. We don't need a bloke who needs to be loved. We need someone who can make the tough calls, cop the flack, and do what's right anyway. That's leadership, and we're not seeing it. Take one look at the housing market. Albanese says he's building more homes, but materials are overpriced, tradies are underpaid, and councils are swamped. It's smoke and mirrors. Announcements with no follow-through. And when young people can't afford to leave their parents' homes until they're 35, the government just says, we're working on it. Great. Because when you're living in your childhood bedroom at 33, nothing says progress like another press release. And what's the media doing while all this is going on? Not much. Most outlets are too cozy with Canberra to challenge anything. Albanese gives them a few exclusives, leaks a story here and there, and suddenly they're fawning over his restraint and stability. But the public sees through it. You can only hide behind the ABC for so long before people realize the emperor's not just naked, he's selling off your future one budget cycle at a time. Anthony Albanese doesn't care about your power bill. He cares about staying in power. That's why every decision is calculated, delayed, and designed to keep the polls flatlined rather than rising. He's playing not to lose, and in doing so, he's losing everything that made Australia strong. Independence, resilience, a fair go. Under Albanese, those values are fading, buried under bureaucracy and sold off to consultants. He tells us to be proud of our progress, while people wait months for mental health appointments. While domestic violence shelters are turning women away. While regional hospitals are cutting staff and city clinics are overflowing. What exactly are we proud of, Prime Minister? That we've learned how to suffer politely? That we've mastered silence? Or that we're expected to clap while the country falls apart around us? And the worst part, Albanese is already campaigning for re-election. Before the problems he created are even half-fixed, he's back on the trail, spinning yarns, kissing babies, blaming the opposition. And what's his big pitch? That things could be worse under someone else. That's it. That's the whole campaign. Fear, deflection. Hope that Aussies are too worn out to care. But we're not. We're watching. We're remembering. Every missed promise. Every ignored voice. Every lie wrapped in buzzwords and every smug shrug when questioned. This isn't just about politics anymore. It's about principle. About not letting another election go by where we get seduced by slogans and stabbed by silence afterward. Because if Anthony Albanese stays in power unchecked, if we don't call out this charade for what it is, we're not just losing faith in one government. We're losing the thread of what made this country worth fighting for in the first place. And if Albanese won't fix it, we will. Stay sharp, stay loud, and never stop speaking the truth, even when they try to ban it. We're done being polite. See you in the next one, and don't forget to slap that like button like it just taxed your super and called it fairness. Oi, and if you're really fed up, grab the Make Politics Honest Again, wear it to the next rent hike, the next protest, or just down the servo when you're filling up and wondering how the hell this became normal.